Some songs are like fireworks, dazzling for a moment, then gone forever. Others refuse to die. They haunt the air, they resurface when no one expects them, and they carry with them the weight of stories too strange, too dramatic, too human to forget. One of those songs is Emotion. For many, it's remembered as a turn-of-the-millennium ballad, sung by one of the biggest girl groups in the world, but that's only half the story. The truth is older and darker, because Emotion was not theirs. It was born in the late 1970s, at the height of a cultural fever dream, written by three brothers from Britain who were loved and hated in equal measure, the BeeGees. They were worshipped as hitmakers, cursed as disco kings, mocked as symbols of excess. But behind the ridicule, they never stopped writing, and when the BeeGees gave away Emotion to a fragile singer on the edge of collapse, they set into motion a strange destiny. One that would rescue her career for a moment, only to watch her fade again. One that would disappear for decades before returning in a form the brothers never could have predicted. This is the story of Emotion, a song that outlived the very people it was meant to save, a song that became a ghost of its own, and a song that proved the BeeGees' genius could never be erased. And if you love uncovering the hidden stories behind the music you thought you knew, the betrayals, the comebacks, the whispers, and the legends, make sure you're subscribed to RetroWaves, because here the songs are never just songs, they're lifelines. It was 1977. The world was dizzy on disco, drowning in sequins, and hypnotized by the BeeGees' falsettos. But far from the glitter, in Australia, one singer was slipping into silence. Her name was Samantha Sang. She had the kind of voice that critics love to call delicate, soft, breathy, like porcelain that could crack at any second. Beautiful, but fragile, and fragility doesn't always survive in the cutthroat world of music. She'd tasted a little success, but her career wasn't soaring. Labels were losing interest. Rumors swirled in Australian press that she was yesterday's promise before she'd ever even broken through internationally. For Samantha, the dream was fading fast. And then, the BeeGees appeared. Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb were everywhere in 1977. They had written half the soundtrack to the cultural revolution happening under disco lights. But what the public didn't see was just how many songs they were sitting on. The BeeGees wrote like other people breathed, in hotel rooms, on airplanes, at 3 a.m. after shows. Melody after melody, lyric after lyric. They had too many hits for themselves, too many ideas to contain in a single album. That was their secret weapon. They didn't just sing hits, they made them. And one of those songs, waiting in their notebooks, was Emotion. Here's where the rumors begin. Why would the BeeGees give away a song so haunting, so powerful to an artist barely known outside of Australia? One theory says Barry Gibb was captivated by Samantha's voice. He heard in her trembling delivery a vulnerability he couldn't manufacture himself. Another story claims it was strategy. The BeeGees were already everywhere, and radio was groaning under the weight of their dominance. Giving the song to someone else allowed them to stretch their empire without overexposing their name. But the most persistent rumor, that Emotion was a leftover, a track the brothers didn't think was strong enough for themselves, quietly handed off like scraps from a royal feast. And yet, if that were true, why did Barry Gibb step into the studio himself? Because Barry didn't just write Emotion, he sang it, hidden, ghost-like, behind Samantha Sang. When you listen closely, you can hear him, his falsetto echoing behind her verses.
Nobody left in this world to kiss goodnight.
Haunting the chorus, never overshadowing but always present. It wasn't just Samantha's record, it was their record, disguised as hers. Why would one of the most famous men in music hide in someone else's song? Was it humility? Was it control? Or was it a test? A way to see if their melodies could still work when the BeeGees' name wasn't on the front cover. Some insiders whispered that Barry was so protective of Emotion that he refused to let it out of his hands entirely. Others claimed Samantha begged him to sing on it, knowing she couldn't carry the weight of the song alone. Whatever the truth, the result was undeniable. Samantha Sang's voice, trembling with heartbreak wrapped in Barry Gibb's falsetto, created a recording that sounded less like a pop single and more like a confession whispered in the dark. When Emotion hit radio in late 1977, it caught fire. Listeners couldn't place it. It didn't sound like disco, it didn't sound like country, it didn't even sound like traditional pop. It sounded fragile, almost broken, and that's what made it irresistible. By early 1978, Emotion had reached #3 on the Billboard Hot 100.
In the words of a broken heart, it's just emotion that's taking me.
Samantha Sang was suddenly on magazine covers, on TV, a name on everyone's lips. For a brief shining moment, she looked like the next great star. But behind the curtain, everyone in the industry knew this was a BeeGees song. Their fingerprints were everywhere. And here lies the tragedy. Samantha Sang's career never survived beyond Emotion. Her follow-up singles flopped, labels stopped calling, the press moved on. Some said her voice was too fragile to carry an entire career. Others claimed she had been propped up by the BeeGees and couldn't stand without them. The cruelest rumor of all? That Samantha Sang had been used as a vessel, a convenient face for a BeeGees track that they didn't want to put their own name on at the time, a ghost singer carrying a ghost song. Within a year, Samantha Sang was gone from the charts, remembered only for one song. But for Barry, Robin, and Maurice, it was another victory, another example of their endless reach. Even when their voices weren't on the record, their melodies still bent the world to their will, and Emotion itself? It didn't die. It lingered, waiting. It haunted radio stations, mixtapes, and jukeboxes long after Samantha Sang faded away. Like all ghosts, it was waiting for someone to summon it again. After 1978, Emotion became a ghost. The song had carried Samantha Sang to the very top of the charts, but once the dust settled, the world moved on. For her, it was both a blessing and a curse. A Nubyer Billboard hit etched her name into history, but only for that one moment. By the early 80s, Samantha was already fading from memory, the classic definition of a one-hit wonder. And yet the song itself didn't disappear. It lingered in jukeboxes, whispered across late-night radio stations, and lived on in the collections of die-hard BeeGees fans who knew the truth. This wasn't just Samantha Sang's song. This was a BeeGees song in disguise. Still, the industry had no more use for it. For more than 2 decades, Emotion slept, waiting for its second life. Ironically, as Samantha slipped into obscurity, the BeeGees themselves were facing exile of another kind. The late 70s had been their kingdom, staying alive, Night Fever, How Deep Is Your Love, They had conquered the world, but with their dominance came a brutal backlash. Disco sucks, 2 words that turned into a movement. Radio stations staged bonfires of BeeGees records. Critics mocked them as the poster boys of excess. By the early 80s, the brothers were virtually banned from American radio. Imagine it, the very men who had once defined the sound of a generation were now pariahs. They could still write, oh, they could always write, but their own voices were unwelcome. So the BeeGees went underground. They wrote for others. Barbra Streisand, Dionne Warwick, Diana Ross, all carried BeeGees-penned hits to the charts. But when it came to their music, silence, and in that silence, Emotion lay forgotten. But not entirely forgotten. Among collectors, whispers grew of a lost BeeGees recording of Emotion, a version with Barry's falsetto and Robin's harmonies layered in full, not just as background to Samantha's fragile lead. Did it exist? Nobody could prove it. Some insiders claimed it was sitting in a vault, too polished to be a demo, too raw to be released. Others said Barry deliberately destroyed it, wanting Samantha's version to stand alone. Whether real or myth, the rumor added to the song's mystique. Fans speculated endlessly. What would Emotion have sounded like if the BeeGees had released it themselves? Would it have been even bigger? Or would it have been swallowed in the disco backlash, forgotten before it could shine? Decades passed. The BeeGees grew older. Samantha Sang disappeared from headlines, and Emotion seemed destined to remain a relic of the 70s, until the year 2001. Out of nowhere the song returned, this time in the voices of Destiny's Child. At the peak of their fame, Destiny's Child were unstoppable. Beyoncé, Kelly, and Michelle had become the voices of a generation, blending R&B with pop, style with substance, independence with vulnerability, and in their Survivor album sessions, they turned back the clock, digging into the Bee Gees archives and pulling out a song the world had almost forgotten. The result? A cover of Emotion that was both familiar and brand new. When Destiny's Child sang Emotion, it wasn't a disco ballad. It wasn't a fragile one-hit wonder. It became an anthem of heartbreak for a new century. The harmonies shimmered, the production was stripped back, intimate, raw. And suddenly, Emotion belonged to millions of young listeners who had never heard of Samantha Sang and who had no idea the Bee Gees had written it. For them, it was Destiny's Child's song, and yet in the shadows, the Bee Gees had triumphed again. But even the Destiny's Child version carried whispers. Some said the group hadn't wanted to record it at first, fearing that covering a 1970s ballad would feel outdated. Others claimed Beyoncé's father, Matthew Knowles, pushed for it as a way to showcase their vocal depth beyond the fast, flashy singles. There was even talk that Barry Gibb himself had approved the cover personally, blessing the idea because he saw in Destiny's Child the same thing he once saw in Samantha Sang, voices capable of carrying his melodies with heartbreaking fragility. Whatever the truth, the gamble worked. The cover was a success, reaching the charts around the world and becoming a fan favorite. Destiny's Child even filmed a tear-streaked video for it, cementing the song as a ballad for the broken-hearted in a new millennium. And just like that, Emotion had a second life. For Samantha Sang, it was a bittersweet resurrection. Her name rarely mentioned as new fans assumed the song belonged to Destiny's Child. For Destiny's Child, it was proof of their range, their ability to make even a Bee Gees relic sound fresh. And for the Bee Gees, it was another hidden victory. A song they had written decades earlier, nearly forgotten, now alive again. Their fingerprints on another generation's heartbreak. That's the real story of Emotion. No matter who sang it, Samantha Sang or Destiny's Child, it always belonged to the Bee Gees. They were the architects, the ghostwriters, the invisible hand guiding its destiny. They rescued Samantha Sang's career, if only for a moment. They gifted Destiny's Child a timeless ballad to prove their staying power. And in the process, they proved something far greater, that while fame fades, great songs never die. And if you've ever wondered how many of your favorite songs secretly carry the fingerprints of the Bee Gees, keep watching RetroWaves, because this is only one of dozens. By the early 2000s, Emotion had lived two very different lives. First, as the fragile lifeline of Samantha Sang in 1977, a song that gave her a brief taste of glory before vanishing into the silence of one-hit wonderdom. Then, as the tear-soaked anthem of Destiny's Child in 2001, a song that proved their vocal power, cementing their place as not just chart toppers, but storytellers of heartbreak. And yet, beneath both versions, one truth lingered like a ghost. This was always a Bee Gees song. No matter who sang it, no matter the decade, Emotion carried the fingerprints of Barry and Robin Gibb. And the fact that it kept resurfacing long after the critics dismissed the Bee Gees, long after disco was burned in effigy, long after Samantha Sang had disappeared, proved the brothers' melodies had a life of their own. But why this song? Why did Emotion endure when so many others faded? That's where the myths begin. Among Bee Gees fans, perhaps the most enduring rumor is the one about the lost Bee Gees recording of Emotion. Whispers began in the 80s, long after Samantha Sang's version had slipped from radio. Collectors claim to have heard a tape, a full Bee Gees rendition, with Barry on lead and Robin weaving harmonies around him. Some even swore Maurice had added touches of his own. The story went that the brothers had recorded it in demo form, intending to release it themselves before deciding to hand it off to Samantha. But why? Some say they feared oversaturation, that another Bee Gees single in 1977 would have drowned in the tidal wave of their own success. Others claim it was brotherly politics, that Barry loved the song but Robin didn't, and rather than argue, they shelved it. Still others insist Barry wanted to test whether their songs could survive without their name attached. Whether the recording exists or not remains a mystery. It has never been released, but the rumor itself gave the song a mythic glow. Fans wondered, had the Bee Gees kept it, would it have become even bigger, or would it have been lost, buried in the disco backlash that consumed them? Then there's Samantha Sang herself. For her, Emotion was both salvation and curse. On one hand, it gave her a career-defining hit. Without it, she might never have broken through internationally. On the other, it defined her so completely that she could never escape it. Everything she recorded afterward was measured against it. Nothing came close. Rumors swirled about her bitterness, that she felt used, that she resented being remembered only as a vessel for the BeeGees' creation. Others claimed she was grateful, even decades later, for the moment it gave her. Whatever the truth, her story became part of the song's shadow, a reminder that one song can give you the world and take it away just as quickly. Fast forward to 2001, for Destiny's Child. Emotion wasn't about disco or Samantha Sang, or even the BeeGees' exile. It was about heartbreak in its purest form. They recorded it during the sessions for Survivor, an album about resilience and betrayal. Their version stripped away the 70s gloss and turned it into something rawer, more intimate. And when they sang it, millions of young fans felt it in their bones. But here's the twist. Many of those fans had no idea they were listening to a BeeGees song. To them, it was Destiny's Child's creation. Some critics even dismissed it as just a cover, not realizing they were listening to one of the Gibb brothers' hidden gems. Others accused the group of picking an easy ballad, not knowing the decades of history and heartbreak woven into its fabric. And yet the song soared. It reached charts around the world, won critical praise, and cemented itself as one of the group's most emotional performances. In truth, Destiny's Child had not just revived emotion, they had baptized it for a new era. Once again, the BeeGees stood in the shadows of their own creation. They didn't sing it, they didn't headline it, but they wrote it. And without them, Destiny's Child's emotion would never have existed. For Barry and Robin, now older and far from their disco days, it was a reminder of their quiet power. Even when the world forgot them, their songs had a way of sneaking back into the spotlight, sometimes in voices far removed from their own. That was the BeeGees' greatest gift and perhaps their greatest tragedy. Their genius was undeniable, but it often lived under someone else's name. The Destiny's Child version brought its own myths. Some insiders claimed Beyoncé was hesitant to record it, worried that covering a 70s ballad would feel outdated. Others insisted Matthew Knowles pushed for it, seeing it as a way to prove the group's range beyond dance hits. And then there was the rumor, never confirmed, that Barry Gibb himself gave the song his personal blessing, that he approved Destiny's Child's version because he believed they could deliver the same vulnerability he once heard in Samantha Sang's voice. Was it true? Nobody knows for sure. But the idea that Barry, decades after giving the song away once, would give it away again, feels almost poetic. So what does this all mean? It means that emotion isn't just a song. It's a ghost that refuses to die, a lifeline that reappears when artists or entire generations need it most. For Samantha Sang, it was salvation and tragedy, all in one. For Destiny's Child, it was proof of their depth, a moment that showed the world they weren't just survivors, they were interpreters of timeless heartbreak. And for the BeeGees, it was vindication. Even after being mocked, even after being driven off the airwaves, even after being told their time was over, their melodies kept living. They were the invisible hand, the hidden architects, the quiet heroes behind the voices of others. Think about it, a fragile Australian singer, nearly forgotten, a powerhouse American girl group rising at the turn of a new century, both of them tethered by a single song, both of them saved, in different ways, by the same melody. And at the center of it all, the BeeGees. Barry and Robin, writing in the shadows. Barry's falsetto ghosting Samantha's verses. Barry's rumored blessing echoing through Destiny's Child's studio. Their fingerprints stretching across decades, across continents, across generations. It wasn't just a song, it was a lifeline. So maybe that's why emotion endures, because it's not just about heartbreak, it's about survival. Samantha Sang's survival, however fleeting, Destiny's Child's survival, proving themselves as more than just chart machines. And the BeeGees' survival, the brothers who were written off, mocked and silenced, yet whose songs still conquered the world. Because sometimes, the true heroes of music aren't the ones in the spotlight. They're the ones in the shadows, writing the lifelines the world doesn't know it needs, until the moment it does. And emotion is the proof. A song that lived twice, saved twice, and carried the BeeGees' legacy forever. If you've enjoyed this story of survival, heartbreak, and hidden genius, make sure you're subscribed to RetroWaves, because here, the songs are never just songs. They're mysteries, they're ghosts, they're legends that refuse to die. And emotion? It's all of them.